Hello and welcome to Beyond Biotech, the weekly podcast from Labiotech. I'm Dylan Kassane and this is episode 166 for the podcast. Immunology and inflammation are hot topics in biotech and biopharma, and innovations are emerging that can change the game for patients suffering from autoimmune, gastrointestinal and metabolic disease. For top pharma companies, identifying these innovations early is essential, and for university labs, spinouts and startups, getting their science in front of the right industry partners is key. So how does science meet industry? And how can top pharma and venture investors find the next blockbuster? This week, I sat down with Joe Ferner of Inpart, the author of a new R&D Trends Report on immunology and inflammation. He explained the shape of the research landscape, the areas that are generating the most interest among industry and investors, and the ways in which digital platforms are helping innovative scientists connect with those who have the experience and finance to bring their technologies and therapies to market. I hope you enjoy my deep dive into immunology, inflammation, and biotech partnering with Joe Ferner, right after this message from Inside Biotech.
Are you curious about the people and breakthroughs shaping the future of biotechnology? Then you've got to check out Inside Biotech, hosted by me, Gabriela Rubert. Inside Biotech features monthly conversations with the scientists, entrepreneurs, and investors driving innovation in one of the fastest growing biotech hubs, Los Angeles. Recent episodes featured topics like drug repurposing for treatment of certain cancers, science-backed consumer wellness brands, and navigating career transitions outside of academic research. From cutting-edge science to real career stories, it's where science storytelling, big business, and professional development all intersect. Search Inside Biotech wherever you get your podcasts and hit follow today.
Joe, welcome to Beyond Biotech.
Hi Dylan, thank you for having me.
Joe, recently you were part of the team behind Impart's R&D Trends Report on immunology and inflammation. This report's part of a series that Impart's released over the last couple of years. But before we dive too much into this report, why don't you just start by telling me a little bit about what these R&D Trends Reports actually are, and where do you get the data that goes into these reports?
Yeah, great. Well, it's actually been a bit of a kind of meandering journey to end up where we are with these current iteration of the R&D Trends Report. So I guess to sort of give a bit more backstory and context to it, it kind of originated with our Global Challenges program, which is something that we started as our response to the COVID-19 pandemic back in 2020. So you and the listeners will probably remember that at the time it was a really interesting time for the kind of science research and research translation community, because suddenly all these frontiers of research came crumbling down, and there was this massive global collaboration to try and respond to the pandemic in a way that we've not really seen before. And so as part of that, we realized at Inpart that we're kind of sat on this massive network of stakeholders on all sides of the kind of research ecosystem. And we thought, okay, well, we should be using this and our position here to try and do our bit to help with the pandemic. So what we ended up doing was going out to the kind of thousands of research institutes and universities around the world who are in our network and saying, look, send us any details of COVID-related research that you're doing. We'll take it, we'll put it on our Connect platform, which normally would cost a subscription. We'll host it for free and we'll push it out to relevant companies to try and initiate partnerships and facilitate solutions to the pandemic. And that went really well, and we pulled in over 350 responses from the research community, and those things varied from things like personal protective equipment to ventilators to vaccine technologies. And we started over 150 conversations between those groups in the research and relevant teams in companies who are actively looking to develop solutions. And that then kind of led us on to this program of global challenge campaigns, whereby we would pick kind of key topic areas that we thought were important globally, and run these discrete campaigns within them. As part of that, we would bring on board industry partners who would communicate their relevant interest within the topic area, and we'd receive submissions from the research community. And so we saw a kind of different ways in which that research was being carried out within those topics and being engaged with by the industry audience. We also ran kind of webinar series that started conversations around that research. And so at the end of each campaign, we had this sort of pocket of data around that specific topic area. So we started producing these trends reports related to those global challenge campaigns. We then ran, I think, 9 global challenge campaigns in total, with topics ranging from sustainable materials to sustainable agriculture, oncology, rare disease. And fast forward a few years to last year, and we kind of made a strategic shift away from running the whole campaign to just homing in on these R&D trends reports, because in actual fact, as part of the Inpart platform, we're actually kind of sat on a wealth of data around, the research community, how what's going on in research area in multiple topics, and how they're being engaged with by the industry audience and the potential funding bodies, and that data is kind of always ticking along in the background. So without needing to run the campaigns, we can still produce these R&D trends reports. So we started producing the reports in isolation, and the latest one that we published, the Immunology and Inflammation that you mentioned, that was the 8th one that we've published, with others this year, including biotechnology assets and research platforms, as well as what else have we produced this year? Sustainable chemical and material sustainability, oncology. We've done things in nanotechnology and antibody therapeutics, to name a few. The full list of R&D trends reports that we have can be found on our website in the partnering resources page. Sorry, that was a long-winded response.
Well, that was the 8th one. You've got another report in progress right now, is that right?
That is correct, yeah. So I'm currently, I've just finished the first draft of our next report, which will be the 9th. And that will be in cell and gene therapy. So we kind of like to mix up the approach of the report between maybe more kind of indication focused. For example, we did respiratory disease and eye diseases last year, to more of the modalities / therapy side of things. So cell and gene therapy, antibody therapy, because that way we get kind of we demonstrate the best variety of research that we have on our platform and the best data around that. And it gives the best snapshot of these different areas.
Perfect. Let's dive into this most recent report then, starting with the challenges that researchers are facing and the priorities that they're setting. What are the most pressing challenges that you found when it comes to immunology and inflammation R&D today?
Yeah, so as part of these R&D trends reports, we always like to sort of start by pulling out some of the key challenges within the research around that topic area, with the idea being that we can then kind of share a range of impactful opportunities and technologies that we have that address those challenges. So, for example, one that came up in the production of the I&I report is this kind of high prevalence of translational failure when trying to progress technologies from that preclinical validation step into the clinic. And obviously that can cost companies a lot of money when you take something into clinical trials and then hit failure. And I think, one of the key reasons that this happens is a lack of kind of reliability or the limitations associated with preclinical models that are currently being used in the mainstream, because they're not quite mimicking the complexity of the human immune system. And that's where kind of new solutions come into play, which ties in nicely with our sponsor on the report, who are Hub Organoids, who are part of Merck, who have a huge biobank of organoids, which is a kind of potential more accurate, a better preclinical model for translating this research.
One of the things that I got out of the report when I read through is really the complexity of the immune system. And that's really almost a redundancy as a barrier to really effective therapeutics in the end. Can you give some context as how this complexity actually impacts a drug development?
Yeah, sure. So this was another of the kind of key challenges that was pulled out as a kind of barrier to immunology and inflammation research, is that immune system complexity, as we put it. And it's worth noting that my background's in chemistry, so this isn't my area of expertise, but I'll try my best to kind of elaborate on these questions. But from my understanding, because the immune system is so complex and quite unique to each individual, it makes it kind of a lot more complicated for treatment. And you have this idea of what's called immune redundancy. So there are these backup pathways that kind of kick into action to restore function in the event of disruption to that pathway, which in a normal case is a good thing if you're fighting off pathogens, if you need your immune system to work well. But if you're looking to target the immune system itself as a form of therapeutic, or from a therapeutic standpoint, that makes things tricky. So obviously in the case of autoimmune disease, the immune system starts to target healthy tissue because it mistakes it for a threat. And this idea of redundancy helps it to continue to do so, even if you try and block those overactive immune pathways. So it's that kind of backup mechanism then starting to backfire and allowing the immune system to continue to attack its own body tissue. So one specific example is cytokine redundancy. So cytokines are kind of key signaling molecules that are produced in inflammation and immune response, and they've presented over the recent years like a really interesting target for potential therapeutic intervention, particularly in autoimmune diseases and inflammatory diseases. But for example, if you take the cytokine interleukin-4, which is implicated in asthma, that has what's called a redundant pair with interleukin-13. So if you target 4 and stop that, 13 can step in and perform a similar function. So it basically increases the kind of the number of targets that you have to think about and the complexity of the research there in terms of finding therapeutics that cover these bases.
I guess the targets are really hard to find, but there's also this issue of the clinical heterogeneity as well. Everybody's just a little bit different, and so for autoimmune diseases, that must make it really hard to target these.
Yeah, exactly. And as I was saying before, the kind of the immune system is very unique to the individual. So this idea of clinical heterogeneity, the immune response in each individual can really vary across a patient population. So symptoms present differently, and that makes diagnosis more complicated. It makes treatment more complicated, and it means that therapies themselves can have varying efficacy from patient to patient, which can itself convolute trial results, and it really kind of highlights a need for more tailored therapy. And it just generally kind of makes it difficult, because if you try and apply a one-size-fits-all approach to something that's this much more nuanced, then it doesn't work for everybody in the patient population. So what's needed is more kind of universal biomarkers and things that will enable kind of more accurate prediction of disease course and treatment response across the whole patient population within a specific disease.
So what are people doing then? What are researchers doing to sort of tackle this problem where there's no universal biomarker?
Well, this is where I'd say it's probably worth reading the report to have a look at some of the research that's ongoing. So yeah, one of the kind of key bits of the report is we present the breakthrough innovations, if you like. So it's worth having a look at what's written in there, but certainly things like big data and AI they're helping to kind of accelerate this field with them playing big roles in genomics and bioinformatics and helping to find biomarkers and things like that a lot quicker than we previously had access to.
Yeah, a couple of minutes ago you mentioned organoids, and you talked about the role of these organoids, and of patient-derived organoids are mentioned in the report as well, as being a help in overcoming the limitations of the preclinical model. Can you also talk a little bit about the biobanks that you mentioned? Because you mentioned hub organoids and their biobanks. How do they actually enhance the development of therapeutics in this field?
Yeah, so organoids I mentioned they're a potential kind of a better, more accurate preclinical model, and it's basically a sort of mini organ, if you like, in a dish. It's a collection of cells that are derived from stem cells that can mimic the function of human organs, and that kind of better captures the complexity of how the human body might interact with a potential therapeutic than just basic cell culture can. So it's potentially a better model for preclinical validation and proof of concept, and then hopefully can play a part in kind of curbing that translational failure that we mentioned. And yeah, it can be derived from a patient's own cells, so it also opens up this door to precision medicine and tailored approaches to treatment, which is potentially really impactful on a community where the disease can vary from patient to patient.
So can these organoid models, they're better, they compare well when it comes to basic animal models, when it comes to accuracy, scalability?
So in terms of accuracy, they're obviously kind of more accurate at capturing human-specific biology than an animal model would be, being derived from human cells. So they can give potential better predictions as to how the potential drug might interact with the organ of interest or the tissue of interest. And immune response itself is something that's very species specific. For example, zebrafish are used widely throughout kind of therapeutic research, but a lot in immunology and inflammation research, because they're a really nice model for watching kind of immune responses in real time, because the embryos are transparent. But patient-derived organoids allow kind of accurate and personalized models of disease, where these zebrafish models don't. So I guess it kind of also depends whether you're looking at a kind of whole organism view of how the drug interacts, because obviously you can't see anything about bioavailability when you're looking at it within a tissue culture or an organoid, versus how it interacts with that tissue of interest. So really, maybe if the two are used in conjunction, that's probably even better. As for the question of scalability, organoids do have some catching up to do, because for years it's been this animal model or cell culture model in therapeutic discovery. So those are more kind of plug in and play, if you like. But that's where companies like our sponsor, Hub Organoids, are coming in, because they have this massive biobank of human-derived organoids and patient-derived organoids. So they're already starting to scale this technology. And that's why companies like Merck are interested in companies like Hub Organoids and this technology, because even if there's a small chance that will reduce translational failure when moving into the clinic, then that's potentially like massive cost savings for a company looking to take a drug to market. So that's why there's buzz around it.
Let's talk a little bit about the landscape and the market here. In the report, you note a 50% increase in therapeutic assets in this domain since 2020 and 10 billion invested in 2024. Big numbers. What's driving the investment? What's driving the development?
Yeah, it's interesting, and actually, there's a good article about it in Labiotech, if I can plug your own outlet, about the recent investment boom in immunology and inflammation research. I'd say one of the key drivers is the huge patient populations that there are within this. For example, autoimmune disease is estimated 1 in 10 people suffers from an autoimmune disease, and that prevalence is increasing worldwide as well. It is interesting. There are a number of factors and reasons for the increasing prevalence, including the current environments that we live in, especially in more industrialized countries. So there's an increasing need for these clinical interventions, and when you pair that with the kind of potential for better therapeutics in the area, things that are more precise and more powerful than existing treatments. That's part of the reason for this investment boom, I would say. There's certainly some new innovation coming out that can help transform this area of medicine. I think it would be remiss if I didn't also mention the kind of perhaps more cynical side of things, which is profitability for drug companies. So the majority of autoimmune diseases are chronic conditions, which means the patients will need to take these treatments across a lifetime. So that's obviously better for business when you can sell someone a pill for a continued amount of time. When you compare that to, for example, antimicrobial resistance, which is a big issue potentially facing the future of medicine, and there's very little investment from the big drug companies in this, because to develop a new antibiotic, someone takes it for a short course of 5 days and then they've got rid of the infection. So it's not as good for business as something that you can continue to sell to someone. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on sort of the healthcare inequality and all of this, but it's worth noting that there is also a cost and profitability argument to this.
The other side of that market and landscape, though, is the modalities that people are choosing. Small molecules, monoclonal antibodies, peptides. These are really becoming the modalities of choice for autoimmune diseases. What's driving that?
So this is an interesting one, and I think this illustrates the combination of traditional research routes, like kind of mechanisms that have been around for years and years and years, and then the kind of shiny new approaches as well. So small molecules will always come up top of the list. Like the central medical research dogma is like, look, here's a biological process that causes the disease. Let's try and make a compound that we can synthesize in a lab that will stop that biological process to prevent the disease, and then we can turn that into a nice orally available pill and mass market it. That's the pharma company's holy grail. That's cheap and scalable, and that's the ideal approach to drug discovery. Then add to that, you've got monoclonal antibodies, MABs, which is less straightforward in terms of the scalability and the cost of them, but they offer this huge potential for kind of high precision medicine and unlocking kind of new therapeutic areas that we haven't yet seen, and is also, I guess, an area of research that we'd describe as a sexy area of research at the moment. So that's why those two top the list. And it's not just in this report. Before this, we ran a report on oncology, and again, those two modalities were topping the lists. And I see it time and again. Small molecules and MABs are those that are most of interest and in the highest development amongst assets.
Now, in the report, and I'll remind the to everybody listening that we're linking to the report in the show notes, and you can grab it right there from your podcast feed. But in the report, you list out some top innovations in immunotherapies. Can you share details about maybe one or two of the breakthroughs that you put on the list and the potential impact that they just might have?
Yeah, sure. So, as part of each of these R&D Trends reports, one of the kind of most popular sections of the report is this breakthrough innovations list. So this is the kind of top opportunities list that we rank as the most impactful based on a metric that we've kind of devised from the data that we have. Within the Immunology and Information report, there's actually I've split it into sort of 4 broad approaches and a top 10 for each. So that's a top 40, if you like, featured in this report. But for example, top of the first list is a solution from Vivero Therapeutics, that are a spin-out company associated with QIMR Berghofer, who are an Australian-based research institute. I think QIMR stands for Queensland Institute of Medical Research. But yeah, essentially this technology from their spin-out Vivero Therapeutics, it takes this idea that instead of blocking a single immune signal, what if you could dial down a whole storm of them, storm being the kind of terminology used for multiple immune signals. What if you can kind of dial down or dampen an entire storm at once? And this kind of links back to what I was saying earlier about cytokine redundancy specifically. So instead of just targeting a single cytokine and seeing the efficacy of that drug wane over time, as other cytokines step in and regain the function. The Vivero antibody technology takes what they call a master switch approach, which means it can dampen multiple cytokines at once. And there isn't currently an immunotherapeutic that targets multiple cytokines in this way. So partial multi-cytokine blockade like this, it has the potential to control disease more effectively than just a single cytokine blockade, and it has fewer side effects than sort of the total suppression approach. On the other hand, on another list, we've got JT Pharma's, at the top of one of the other lists, we have JT Pharma's small molecule inhibitor, and this again reflects nicely what we were just saying, as one of these technologies is an antibody and the other is a small molecule inhibitor. So again, those are the top 2 modalities in the research coming out of the research community, as well as the biotechnology assets. But yeah, so the JT Pharma technology sees a small molecule inhibitor, that targets inflammasome, which is a kind of multi-protein that's implicated in various inflammation responses, including irritable bowel diseases such as ulcerative colitis. And their inhibitor displays more effective inhibition than relevant competitors and a good safety profile. So both of these technologies are just 2 of 40 featured in the report, which, as Dylan says, you can download easily and have a look at, and also just 2 of thousands of technologies that are on our Inpart Connect platform, which is free to sign up for and browse, and there'll be a link to sign up to that as well.
Tell me about these rankings, though, because you use an impact score. How do you actually calculate this impact score? It's not just something you invented just for this report.
It is something that we invented for this report series, if you like. So it's a very kind of simple concept based around the data that we have, but essentially it takes 2 kind of key engagement metrics. So one being article views, so how many times someone in a relevant company has clicked on a summary of a potential opportunity to read it. Obviously that shows interest. Something being read a lot, points to it being a hot topic. And then we have this idea that if that company user who's clicking to read the opportunity is interested in actually connecting with the group behind it, they can request a connection, and then our team will put them in contact, and they can start a conversation, a non-confidential discussion around that technology. So those kind of conversations started, if you like, they're the other engagement metric alongside reads, and obviously conversation started implies more intent and engagement from that industry community, so that is weighted higher than reads within the formula that calculates impact. And then we've also got a kind of denominator, if you like, of time that the opportunity has been published on our platform, because something that's been on there for years and years is obviously going to rack up a decent amount of views, whereas something that's new but has got a similar amount of views is obviously something that's attracting a lot of attention in a short time frame, so that should be ranked higher. It's also the case that things that have been on there a lot longer may have less in-date data in them. Having said that, our team works with the individual institutes who are subscribed to our platform to make sure that the technologies that are on there are as up to date as possible. So that's kind of how the formula works. And it helps us sort the technologies by impact, essentially.
You talked about these 4 different areas. Are there any common themes, any common approaches that you saw really for the top 10 that you made in these 4 different areas?
Well, this is an interesting one, and again, it's reflected in the kind of R&D landscape and the biotechnology assets that we're looking at in the report. In that the top modalities that are coming out are again, small molecules and antibody modalities are often topping these lists. But there is this kind of general theme across the list. So the kind of 4 broad categories are autoimmune disease, cancer, immunology, gastrointestinal diseases, and kind of more like inflammation in general. The categories are more specific, and you'll see them in the report. But yeah, there's a kind of general theme amongst the 4 that targeting these kind of immune checkpoints and switches is the way to go, whether that's in cancer immunology and you're kind of dialing up the immune system for an immunotherapeutic approach, or whether that's autoimmunity and you're dialing down the immune system. The idea is looking at these kind of higher order control points, as they're called, which is looking at the upstream function, so targeting multiple cytokines or a full pathway rather than just one specific cytokine. So yeah, it's that, and I guess another kind of general theme that I'm seeing across these especially medical research reports is moving away from a symptom-focused approach and having a more, in this case, immune pathway targeted approach. So stop waiting until the disease presents, someone has symptoms, and then you treat the symptoms, and actually trying to treat the source of disease, i.e. you target the gas leak before you have to put the fire out.
I want to talk a little bit about the engagement trends that you talk about as well, because the report itself mentions a really high industry demand for early stage research in these areas. But what sort of organizations are actually the most active in engaging with industry partners? Because your platform has startups, it has businesses, academic institutions. Are there some that are more active in engaging with industry partners than others?
The answer is yes, and it's a really interesting question that we at Inpart find ourselves like very well positioned to kind of see all sides of this, and we're kind of right there at the interface of science partnering and have been for years. And you can see that the organizations that are seeking partnerships the most and most engaged tends to be those research institutes, universities around the world. And this is where we're seeing the actual kind of biggest disconnect between what the universities are working on and what the companies are looking for. And it can be quite frustrating for both sides of the conversation. And this is where services like Inpart are kind of vital in helping to bridge that gap between the two, because universities and research institutes, a lot of the research is very innovative. It's that kind of blue sky research that we talk about. And that is obviously vital to the research landscape, because you're never going to get new breakthrough technologies without that original blue sky thinking, or blue sky projects, if you like. But that's something that industry are very hesitant to dip their toe in and get involved in, because it presents a high risk if it's if it's not something that is already established, or at least has some good validation. So in terms of bridging that gap, that's where you get the kind of startups and spinouts coming in to help bridge the gap, and those are often funded by the universities themselves, or by government funding bodies, venture capital, things like that. And this helps the university to take the research from that kind of inception phase to actually get some data and validation and proof of concept, so that it can go to potential industry funders and licensors with a kind of more complete picture, so that's something that they're more likely to then pick up and collaborate on. And so it's interesting, because we often see the complaint from a kind of a highly engaged research community that they're not getting enough feedback from industry, and they're almost sort of shouting into the void with the opportunities that they have and they see as being highly relevant, interesting opportunities. And so another reason that Inpart is really helpful in this is because we actually help link up the two and get that feedback from the industry community to the research community that says, look, we need to see X, Y, and Z, and then let's talk again in a couple of years down the line when this project is here. So yeah, it's a really interesting problem, and it's one that almost becomes paradoxical to the effect that universities need funding to complete that preclinical validation, but companies don't want to fund anything until it's had the validation. So it's quite a difficult problem, and that's where kind of all stakeholders within the research ecosystem are important players.
Maybe we can unpack that a little bit more. I mean, what are the reasons that companies are giving for declining to engage with opportunities, this really early opportunity research?
So this is something again that's featured in all of our R&D Trends reports, because as well as the two engagement metrics that I previously mentioned in article reads and conversation started, we also have this kind of third, if you like, in the industry on our platform can provide feedback to the research institutes or biotech companies that are trying to push out their assets for partnering. And so this feedback is obviously a lot more qualitative, so it doesn't feature in the kind of data impact side of things. But what we do for each report is run a kind of what we call sentiment analysis, where I take all of the feedback that's been received within that topic area, obviously anonymized, and look at key themes within it. And time and again, a theme that comes up is, it's too early. What's really important to industry is the phase of development, that it's had some validation and data, that it's data as far as the industry is concerned. So yeah, as I say, the report indicates some of the more kind of key themes here specific to immunology and inflammation, and it's worth having a look at that industry sentiment side of things if you're from a research institute. But yeah, it often boils down to risk versus reward for the company in question, as well as the idea of competition. So if it's something existing, it needs to demonstrate clear differentiation over similar potential innovations, or if it's completely new, it needs to really kind of have data forward proof of concept before being able to enter into serious discussions with industry. And we have a plethora of resources available to technology transfer professionals and academics and researchers about how to best pitch their opportunities to industry and what key things are needed. So again, it's worth signing up for the Inpart network if you're not already, because there's a lot of resource available.
Inpart is really sitting at that nexus then between the industry partners and the researchers there. How do your search campaigns actually help companies to identify these innovations? And I guess what clinical indications or development stages are they really going after?
Yeah, that's a good point, because up until now we've sort of been talking about the side of our Connect partnering platform, which is more of what we used to call the kind of technology push side, if you like. So it's the research institutes and biotechnology companies who are subscribed to push out their relevant opportunities to an industry audience that might be interested. On the flip side of that, we've got these campaigns, Connect campaigns they're called, which is where a company might browse our platform, because you can sign up for free and do so, and see what's on there already and say, actually, no, I want to do a deeper dive within a specific scientific area, whether that's, a specific autoimmune disease or whatever. They can then come to us and commission a campaign with us, a report essentially to feel out a certain academic landscape. And over the years, as I say, we've built up this really vast and engaged network worldwide amongst research institutes, and this includes researchers and experts and key opinion leaders and tech transfer professionals, heads of department across the world, and they're actively and highly engaged with Inpart and with these campaigns that are run by these commissioning companies. So if a company takes out a campaign with us to identify innovation within a specific area, we don't just go and trawl some patent sites and send everything over. We go out to this engaged network that we have, who then will submit tailored responses to that campaign. So a company can be confident that when taking out a campaign with us, that they'll get a real good kind of picture of the exact landscape that they're probing. And they have this kind of bespoke level of control over their campaign that isn't really available elsewhere, which is why a lot of our clients in this area are repeat clients. They keep coming back because our team that they work with is made up of STEM postgraduates who are, they're passionate about science, and they'll work with the team at the company to fully understand their requirements. And the company can say, we're looking for, specific location, specific stage of development. We want to rule out X, Y, Z as out of scope. They can really tweak it to their exact parameters. All this to say that we have kind of a wealth of data around this side of the partnering platform as well, in the companies taking out search campaigns within the area of immunology and inflammation have had some great successes, and conversations started with submitting organizations. And there is a section at the report towards the end that looks at this side of things as well. So yeah, you asked what kind of clinical indications to development stages are most sought after by these companies commissioning these. I've analysed a few within the report, and actually it really varies from campaign to campaign and company to company. It's a lot less clear cut than the other trends that we've looked at, because I guess it depends on the specific strategy of that company and what they're interested in. So it's hard to kind of pigeonhole it into one specific trend, because it really does vary.
Tell me a little bit more about this platform. How does it actually facilitate the partnership between industry and academia?
Yeah, so as I've mentioned, there's this campaigns aspect where the companies are paying to feel out these research areas. The platform itself sees over 9,000. It's about 9,300 opportunities from over 250 subscribed research institutes who are posting these opportunities on the platform. These are curated by our in-house partnering experts, but they're also, more importantly, from teams who are actively looking to partner and engage around that opportunity. We've got over 20,000 registered users who have signed up for this platform, and they're browsing these opportunities. And so they can, when you sign up for an account, you can fill out a keyword profile, you can communicate your interests, within whatever research area there is. It's worth kind of noting that this isn't just biopharma research. We cover all sectors. The same with the campaigns that we run. They're anything from engineering, chemicals, through to biopharma research. And so we have a team who work with the free account holders, the 20,000 people registered to our network, who are offering them bespoke matches to their keyword profile and their interests. Alongside that, we have smart matchmaking. So there's a kind of human AI collaboration going on in terms of giving these recommendations to the right people in industry who might be interested in partnering with these opportunities that are open for partnering. And with that, we've started thousands of conversations between relevant parties, and yeah, many of them have progressed onto further discussions.
Yeah, you mentioned that 20,000 number. That stood out in the report as well. 20,000 scientific decision makers on the platform. I mean, with that many people, there must have been some connections that stand out to you. Can you tell me about a partnership or a collaboration that formed thanks to that network and that has advanced research?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting one, and it's one it's been quite difficult to pin down over the years because we make that connection, but then we don't remain part of those conversations because we're not a stakeholder within this licensing deal, and we're not taking fees down the line or anything like that. So it's really up to the organizations involved to keep us abreast of how that conversation goes. So we're reliant on their good faith to gather case studies in that respect. We do have a good number of case studies of positive outcomes, licensing agreements, research partnering deals, and things that have arisen from these connections that we've made. And you can find those on our site. I mean, one recent example is we had a case study from a campaign that was taken out by a sort of world-leading biopharma company, but it's anonymized because they ran the campaign anonymously. But they were essentially looking for opportunities within a specific autoimmune disease space, and they turned to our Connect campaigns team to launch a campaign that would help identify unique and relevant technologies within that autoimmune disease. And so we went out to our extensive global network that I mentioned of research institutes and biotechnology companies. And when this campaign finished, the commissioning client, the biopharma company, did communicate to us that from their side of things, it was a significant success, and they pulled in over 130 submissions from relevant research institutes and biotech companies. And at the time that the case study was kind of in production, they had multiple ongoing conversations and discussions around building new relationships with these submitting bodies and the teams behind these submissions. They were in non-confidential discussions with a few biotechs, and they were also in contact with a couple of academic submitters about looking at a partnership down the line. And they said that looking forward, that they hope to incorporate some of these promising candidates either by in-licensing or by funding research, depending on the kind of phase of development of those things. So that just sort of highlights, the potential success of a campaign within immunology and inflammation for a company that's looking to probe that area. But we've got plenty of case studies that are worth having a browse of as well.
So, Joe, looking forward, as you mentioned before, this is just one of a series of R&D trend reports that you've put out. When's the next one coming out, and what's it going to be about?
So as I mentioned at the start, the next one's going to be on cell and gene therapy. That is in production now. I'm taking it through to the design phase at the moment. There's some interesting trends in that, and that should be coming out in Q4 this year, October, November time. It's worth looking out for that, especially if it's an area of interest.
And for people who are wanting to learn a little bit more about the network that you've been talking about and the platform that you've been talking about, and to get their science in front of decision makers, where can they go? Well,
yeah, it's important to note that we offer solutions for any kind of stakeholder, any point within the research partnering journey. So today we've talked a lot about that kind of early stage discovery phase, whether you're a research institute looking to license technology out or whether you're a company looking to discover new assets. We also offer solutions kind of right through to the partnership stage, to business development and licensing, alliance management. So it's really worth talking to one of our partnering experts if you're interested in how one of our potential solutions can help you. You can do so through requesting a demo. I think there'll be a link provided alongside the podcast to do so. I would suggest in the first instance you download the report if you haven't already and sign up for the network because that's free, and then you can really get a good idea of kind of the size of network, the breadth of research available, and start to get an idea of how Inpart might be able to help.
We'll certainly link to those resources in the show notes. Joe, thanks for joining us today on Beyond Biotech.
Thanks a lot, Dylan. Appreciate it.
That's it for this episode. Don't forget to check out all the latest news and analysis at Labiotech.eu. I hope wherever you are in the world, you have a great week ahead. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next time for another Beyond Biotech.